It was December of 2021 when I found the video, perusing my gallery to delete pictures and videos. The video itself was taken at 1:15 a.m. on June 12, 2021.
The first one is really the cell tower blinking, and then the second one is what looks like a ceiling fan.
I think it was an entirely different species type creature, and most of the grays, in one way or another, they typically have a larger gray head, larger eyes, and the rest of their features are smaller, but to different degrees with all of the different things and their body structure.
All right, let's just make sure I kickstart this episode the proper way. Matt, John, thank you both for joining me tonight. Really looking forward to this episode. And can't thank you enough for taking the time to share all this information with us this evening.
Thank you so much, Cameron. Yeah, pleasure to be here.
Well, as discussed before, I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of an introduction of Matt. And then, John, everyone knows you from our previous episode. And so we'll let them go back to that episode and learn a little bit more about your background. But I'm going to start with Matt, and then we will proceed accordingly from there. In what might be one of the most exciting cases that I've ever reviewed in regards to the UFO space and the abduction space. And I'm really pumped to have y'all back on this episode to dive into this report. But Matt, I'm going to go to the very top of this. Matt, you are currently the state director for MUFON in Florida, correct?
That's correct.
Wonderful. You're also a retired U.S. Coast Guard Chief Warrant Officer, 30 years of distinguished service in aviation engineering, and as a helicopter search and rescue air crewman. Over the course of your career, you logged more than 2,000 flight hours and participated in missions that saved 43 lives. Probably a lot more than that, too, that you maybe weren't aware of. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Aeronautical Technology from Purdue University and a Master of Science in Aviation and Aerospace Management from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. Following his retirement, Matt joined MUFON in 2022 and currently serves as a state director for Florida, as well as a member of MUFON's Experiencer Research Team, ERT. He has investigated more than 160 UFO sighting cases and has worked closely with over 40 experiencers reporting contact and abduction events. Now, John is your pseudonym. We are not sharing your identity. We're staying anonymous at this time. But you have an incredible story to tell, and you've had incredible experiences throughout the entirety of your life. And just to kind of kickstart this episode, I would love for you to give us a little bit of a better understanding of your experiences throughout your life that have now led up to, obviously, this latest experience that we're going to dive deep into in this episode today.
I've had lots and lots of experiences throughout my life. I don't try to create anything that I didn't experience, that I don't have some evidence for, but there's been a lot of weirdness that I can't put my finger on throughout my life. Not only plenty of sightings of UFOs, but with friends, family involved, and I've been open about it to people within my group typically, but I never would have come forward. I wasn't planning on writing a book. I wasn't planning on even posting, talking about my experiences publicly until we found the video. That's what we're here to talk about. The video, not only does the video provide validation, but the report that Matt composed and authored is incredible and provides validation to the video itself. On top of all the many, many different video experts and analysts who have authenticated the video for what it purports to be.
So let's go back to that night in 2021, correct? It was December of 2021 when this occurred, right?
It was December of 2021 when I found the video
Okay.
while perusing my gallery to delete pictures and videos. And the video itself was taken at 1:15 a.m. on June 12th of 2021.
Okay. And this was a recording that you were not, you had no memory of recording this video in this spacecraft. This is something that you, as you were perusing through your gallery, you just happened to stumble upon this video as you were deleting other images, correct?
That's correct, Cam.
And what was the, I don't know that we really discussed the emotional response at that time, but at that time, what was the initial like emotional guttural feeling that you had when you found that video?
I'm a pretty even-keeled person. I've never been blown away really by any of my abductions or knowing what I may have gone through. Most of my memories of what's occurred to me have been obtained through regression hypnosis. But it's incredible how, and Matt might back me up, it's incredible how so many of my memories from hypnosis later coincided with various facts that we already knew, or, chicken or the egg, I forget, but, pretty incredible stuff.
Right. You also mentioned around that time there was a severe hip pain that you were experiencing. Do you think that like worked in your favor that night by allowing you to resist sedation enough to get your phone out on the table? And that was one of those things that we kind of discussed in the last episode. But do you think that was something that led to your ability to be able to record that evening?
I think with every piece of data, with all the evidence, more often it creates more questions than provides answers. And I don't have an answer for you.
Okay.
When I suggested it, it's still just a suggestion. I don't know, I have opinions, I have some leanings, but I don't have any specifics. The fact that I had my phone, the likelihood I was walking the 50 or so feet from my car to my townhome, the likelihood is I would have had my phone in my hand. So when they took me, the phone was always in my hand and I never dropped it. And do I know that's the case? No. Maybe it was in my pocket. Maybe the pain in my hip snapped me out of there, what they do to put you in a freeze. Or maybe they allowed me to do it. It seems that they were all standing there motionless for quite a while obviously I was not under their control, for a short time.
Right.
None of them really took any, severe actions. They knew what I was doing, I would assume.
Right. Matt, I want to jump over to you now as we kind of start to dive into this report. You received an email from John in September 2024. Is that correct?
I think it was November 2024.
November 2024. Yep. You probably almost wrote it off at first. I'm just curious to know kind of what your thoughts were on that. You maybe were a little bit skeptical. What was kind of the moment in which your skepticism started to completely crack on this case?
Well, and I mean, initially, I got the email from John that it said, "Hey, he's got this video," and some other labs had taken a look at it, and he just was looking towards having MUFON do the investigation on it. So I think we're probably maybe the fifth or sixth, lab or entity to take a look at it. So that was November 2024. I talked him into, or I urged him to make a report to MUFON, and he said he would consider it. And then I didn't hear anything until May of 2025. And I get a lot of these, kind of off the wall emails, like people that have artifacts and that kind of stuff, and they never really seem to pan out. But with in John's case, May 2024, I received a case, and it was from him, and I was like, man, this is real. So I started diving into it, and it turned into about a 10-month journey. I wrapped up the report in end of February 27th, and it was a roller coaster ride. Absolutely.
I mean, 10 months, you spent hundreds of hours working on this case in particular.
Many hundreds.
When you think about this particular case, maybe comparing it to others, but let's just start with this one. What was, maybe this the single frame or finding that stopped you cold and made you think there really is something here with this particular case?
Honestly, very early on in the investigation that I was doing, I was contacted by Stephen Lea. Actually, John was the one that introduced the two of us. And I was able to look at a lot of the work that he had done. And I think, so this is probably a month into my investigation, that kind of sealed the deal for me right off the bat. And then from that point on, it was just, well, let me go through the motions and see what I can find. And, lo and behold, a lot of the things that John had brought up, like he said, I found within the video. So I think it was a combination of those two.
Got it. And John, I'm thinking back on like this video that you found. Did all of this memory came back from the hypnosis, correct? You had literally no memory of this until the hypnosis.
Correct.
Okay. And when you were going through the hypnosis, did it all come back to you all at once, or did it come back through multiple sessions of hypnosis therapy?
When I still lived in Key West, I don't know exactly how long after. It might have been 10, 11 months. Certainly we can figure it out easily. I had an online regression session with Yvonne Smith, and she's pretty well known in UFO circles as an excellent person to work with to do regression therapy in the hopes of uncovering hidden memories. And we had limited results. The initial part of the abduction came through pretty clearly. And from there, it was tough to take it much further.
Right.
And I have a thought about this. And over the last 6 months, I've done, which now is, what are we talking, going on 5 years, I believe, Matt? Going on.
Oh, yeah, 2021, yeah, so almost 5 years, yeah.
Steven Spielberg's Disclosure Day happens the 5-year anniversary of my video, An Abduction, which is pretty weird. So about, I don't know, I guess about 5 months ago, and another time about 2 months ago, I had regressions with Dr. Thomas Beck in Washington State, and they were extremely successful. And, everything started from the same situation of me walking up my path from the parking lot toward my townhouse, and a gray being in the dark end of the pathway. But I was able to take the regression much further. And my thinking of that is that whatever they do to put a screen on your memory or hide your memory, it was much fresher at the time I did the first regression. And, close to 5 years have gone by, and the memory is still there, but maybe the screen or what they did to hide the memory has faded a bit, allowing for the regression to take better hold. I don't know if that's the case or not, but in 2 regression sessions, I was able to really uncover a lot of information.
Love it. Matt, you are, as a retired Coast Guard chief warrant officer and with an aeronautical background, I think a lot of people struggle in this space because they're like, okay, what kind of credibility does this individual have to be doing this research, or what kind of credibility does this person have in general? You spent a long time in the Coast Guard. You've now got a lot of experience in investigating these kinds of cases. How does your technical training shape how you approach a case like this versus like a typical Joe Schmo like myself off the streets that might be just looking at this and trying to understand what's going on?
Well, a few years before I retired in 2017. A few years before I retired, I went to the NTSB training center in Northern Virginia and went through their accident investigation course and became a certified aircraft accident investigator with the Coast Guard. So I was familiar with the investigative process, and obviously from going to Purdue and Embry-Riddle, certainly they drill the scientific method into your skull with every paper that you turn in. So yeah, I mean that really was the foundation for my investigative process. So I just treated it kind of in similar method.
And so there are a few things that as people kind of go through this report, to which we are allowed to share this, correct, as a follow-up? Or okay, awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as a follow-up, we are obviously going to be sharing this entire report, which is fantastic. Just want to make sure all this is allowed to be shared.
Yep.
But as it relates to the certain parts of the video, people point out the ceiling fan problem that kind of seems to be one of the main pieces of this. You said it was the first thing that you noticed and kind of the first thing that skeptics latch on to. But can you kind of break down exactly why the math rules it out in this particular situation?
Well, yeah, so there were actually two elements that were kind of controversial for skeptics that first view the video. The first one is really the cell tower blinking, and then the second one is what looks like a ceiling fan. But I'll talk about the ceiling fan first. What I did was I used Adobe Premiere Pro to review frame by frame. There's 1,270 frames filmed at 30 frames per second. And about 43 seconds long. And I'm sure you showed it on the last time that John was on, and I'm sure you'll show it a couple of times for this show. But I went frame by frame with Premiere Pro, and when I found a frame of interest, I imported it into Adobe Photoshop, and I used Adobe Photoshop. An older version was Photoshop 7.0, and I chose that for a reason, because in 2016 Adobe introduced machine learning, and then they also later introduced AI into all of their into the Photoshop line. And so I wanted to make sure that I was using something that was not being messed with, by machine learning or AI. I wanted it to be unaltered in every aspect. The only alterations I did were global, and that would be adjusting brightness, contrast, that kind of stuff. Right. And then in some particular frames, especially with the entities that are observed, I darken the background, and I did it all by hand. Just to highlight the figures. So what I did was for the ceiling fan object, which I call the transient ceiling object. It's definitely not a ceiling fan. I counted all of the visible frames with that object in the frame, and when it passed a certain point where there's in the video, there's kind of a disc underneath a ringed light, and when the object got to a certain point in relation to the disc, I made a note of it, which frame that was. And I figured out that there were 49 frames where the object was visible, the object that looks like a ceiling fan blade. There were 17 individual passes. And I found that, and then there were three sequences, three distinct sequences where you could see it. And I found that the pattern wasn't equal. So with a ceiling fan, you would expect a blade pass, 10 frames, blade pass 10 frames, something like that. And what I found was an alternating pattern of 11 and 16. So, frame with the object in the center, count 11 frames, appears again, count 16 frames, it appears again, and it's like that throughout the whole sequence, or all three sequences. So, and that suggests that it's somewhat of an asymmetric geometry. And I kind of compared it, if anybody is familiar with the Army's AH-64 Apache helicopter. It has a kind of a tail rotor blade that is, asymmetrical like that. So that's kind of what I formulated in my head. But as I got, started studying it, I realized it's not moving in a circular motion. It's moving in a linear motion. So it's not rotating. It's, kind of like going like that. And then when I started looking at the individual frames, it didn't look like a ceiling fan blade. It looked like an octopus tentacle. And it's really bizarre. And I'm sure you'll show some of the clips, some of the frames that I isolated. But it looks organic. It looks like it's some kind of a living tissue or organic matter.
Wow. The whole octopus tentacle thing didn't even come to mind, frankly, before. I just thought this might be some kind of device within this craft. It seemed more like, well, I think of like a metal and or something that's much harder. But when you say octopus tentacle, when you say that, do you think quite literally it could be a being above, and or are you saying that that's just what it seemed to look like?
It's entirely possible that it's some kind of an organic element. And in the back of my mind, when I started seeing, frames with this object in it, I thought about, I have a really good friend of mine. She is a lifelong experiencer. And she was telling me about one of her experiences where she was abducted. She was on board a craft. And she said as she was being led through like a hallway, she was led into a room, and as she turned the corner, she put her hand on the bulkhead of the craft, and she instantly realized the craft itself is alive. It has a consciousness of its own, and that was the first thing that popped in my head. Well, maybe I'm looking at, a mechanism on board the craft that is actually, living, which, as weird as it sounds.
I didn't even think about that before, if I'm being completely honest. That's wild. The other part of it too that kind of people, when they see this video, they're going to obviously notice is the tower, the cell tower. So with the proximity to John's home and where the cell tower shows up in the video, it's very clear that you're at an elevated level. You're not on the ground looking up at the cell tower. The cell tower is at the same eye level as wherever they are in the sky. So he's in the sky.
Absolutely.
Can you kind of walk us through the math, the geometry for someone who has never thought about that before, or has not obviously done the study that you have done?
Certainly. So the first thing I did was I tried to identify exactly what cell tower it was. I found it. It's an FCC registered 3-legged self-supporting lattice tower, which is located about a quarter of a mile south of the residence where John was at the time. And it's the only tower in the Lower Keys that has that light configuration, 2 red lights. And the reason for that is because it's sandwiched right in between 2 major airports. You've got Key West International, and then also the Naval Air Station in Boca Chica, Naval Air Station Key West. And so the FAA requires that lighting configuration due to its proximity to those 2 airports. And then what I did, so the tower is 183 feet tall. And the view through the window of the craft is eye level with with those 2 obstruction lights at the top of the tower. And I was able to take some measurements. So I found the on the FCC they have and also the FAA that they have diagrams of these tower configurations, and I was able to figure out that the lights in real life on the tower are approximately 10 feet apart, and then the video was filmed in a 1-to-1 format. And using the metadata off of the video, I determined that the horizontal field of view was 39 degrees. So now I've got 2 known variables there, and then I measured the pixel distance of, the percentage of that distance between those two lights on a couple of different frames, and I figured out that the distance between the two lights is about 10.5% of the total pixel length of the horizontal frame. And using those known variables, I was able to calculate that the camera lens was approximately 130 feet away from the lights, the top of the tower structure. So that is a whole lot closer than a quarter mile. So John definitely did not film this from his living room with a tower outside and a ceiling fan going. So
there's no way he had like a telescope or like something else that could have been projected into this craft that was, right at high level with the lights. There's not like some kind of weird way that he could have gotten a camera up there in the middle of the night in his sleep.
Not that I could. I can't think of any scenario
John,
where that would be possible.
To speak to that for a second?
Yeah.
Are you a sleepwalker as well?
You like math? Math.
Oh, that's awesome.
Would you ask, Cameron?
No, I said, are you a sleepwalker as well? Did you sleepwalk into the sky that evening?
Not the least bit.
The metadata also under forensic review showed no tampering or post-capture modification as well. I'm not sure who wants to speak to that, but I do want to make sure that we talk about the metadata as well for the particular file real quick.
Right. Yeah. So the metadata was unaltered. And then also, I spoke about Stephen Lea, owner of Hidden World. He also determined that, and he was looking at the video at the quantum level. That's what he specializes in. He's done work for, the Department of War. He did it for the DoD, before they changed the name. But also, he did some work for Lawrence Livermore and the Department of Energy, and then obviously, he did some outside work with in the entertainment documentary regime on Mystery of Blind Frog Ranch.
So, is that difficult for you all to refer to it as the Department of War, just like it is for me, because I still refer to everything as Department of Defense? I just can't.
Listen,
it doesn't really click for me yet.
It's all going to be changed back in a couple of years.
Yeah, it's hard for me to. I mean, I went 30, 40 years calling it the DoD. It's hard to switch, but
yeah, it's always been the DoD to me. So anyways. So John, I want to jump into the entities. Everything nowadays, especially the past few months, with like the disclosure and things being discussed even more, I feel like it's top of my feed. Maybe it's just because these are the things that I'm interested in, and therefore it's all over my social media. But Congress, the government, everybody started to talk about these things a whole lot more as of late. And we talk about greys and reptilians and Nordics and all these different creatures and beings and entities. But you described a female frog being projected in a strong sense of like empathy and reassurance towards you. Would you consider that frog being to be more of a reptilian, or still, or maybe something different than what we would refer to as a reptilian in this space?
Well, if it's a frog, then it might be amphibian.
Right.
And if there can be reptilian aliens and lizard aliens and all kinds of, and avian aliens, there could be amphibious aliens.
So you strongly felt as though it was a frog. It was not just like a feeling of a frog. It was from what you saw in your progression.
Well, you can see in the video, in the report, you can see how it's outlined. You can see how its two big black eyes stick out from the side of its head.
Right.
So it had features mainly of a frog, but also maybe some snake-like features as well, but mostly frog-like.
And in that moment, do you remember feeling a sense of terror, or was there maybe some comfort associated with that particular being?
I have never experienced a sense of terror in any of my abductions.
Okay.
I don't know if it's me. I don't know if it's what they do to calm you when they, the same time that their telepathic abilities can make you forget. They can also make you see things. They can probably make you think things. My very first abduction memory was seeing a wolf in the window. And under regression, it was a gray I was looking at. So, again, there's more questions than answers, and I might have a few opinions as far as how some things have worked out, um, to answer your question. But what was your question?
Yeah, but I think about like these beings being benevolent or not. Really, I think that's
Oh,
my biggest thing at the end of the day is do you from all of your experiences and especially this one, do you
yeah.
get this like benevolent feeling from these beings, entities?
No, not benevolent. More cold and non-caring either way.
Okay.
Not that they're trying to hurt me, not that they're trying to save me. Um, I I think I'm more of a science project than anything else. I don't feel I'm not scared that they're going to hurt me, even though they've done some various medical things. I probably feel more violated than scared. Uh, there was one abduction when, during a procedure, I got extremely angry. And one of the Greys had to come over to me and literally went like this in front of my face with its hand. And it was like an immediate Xanax, like a Xanax wave or a Valium wave. And I just, extra conked out when I was getting really angry. And as part of me getting angry, I felt I was coming out of their control. But they knew that. They knew I was experiencing that emotion. And one of them, the short grays, came over to me and put me in a deeper state.
And you do talk about a tall gray, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong here, that communicated with you telepathically, basically saying you have a job to do. And
Well, there's so many different types of gray aliens. I know that from my own encounters. I know that from other people's encounters. I think there's many, many different types of grays, just like there's different types of humanoids. And, just like we have, uh, different size of humanoids that are of different heights, different colors, different the way our features are located and things like that. But with that in mind, I've had one experience where there were tall grays where they were like 7 feet tall. I kind of feel like that's really tall. As far as being on the ship, there were short grays and then there were taller grays.
okay.
When I say taller, the typical grays are like 3.5 feet, maybe 4 feet tall, while these grays were more like 5 to 5.5 feet tall. Not really, really tall and thin. And one of them, unlike some of the others, and there were multiple types of grays, this one had more human-like features. And there's a picture or two in the report that shows him, and he has one big heavy brow that goes over his entire eye area. And I felt that he was more militaristic, more of a military type figure, and he had on a much different type uniform than I had ever seen, and it had a V-neck and even a collar, and it looked like more of a military type thing. Every other gray I've ever seen all had on a black one-piece scuba suit looking thing that they were wearing, and that was it.
Okay.
Real quickly, if I can interject, going back to the frogs, I really
Your question, great.
what's that?
I didn't answer Cameron's question
Oh,
great yet.
oh, okay, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, but I
Yeah,
meant go ahead. You
okay,
jump in. I can still answer.
all right. The frogs really kind of puzzled me. With all the experiencers that I've spoken with over the last few years, frogs have never been a part of the abduction experience for those people. So I was really puzzled by these, and I read a lot of books, and they've never really come up. But there's a gentleman. His name is Eric Nanstiel. He's just has a couple of books that are out now. One is called "The Angst in the Shadows," and he's got another one called "A Blood Covenant." But in "Angst of the Shadows," he talks about being examined by this frog like doctor or healer, and it healed his he had a GI issue, and it healed his issue with GERD. And it was interesting because I was driving through Central Florida listening to this podcast that he was on, and when he started describing this doctor, there was some hesitation in his voice because I felt like he was uncomfortable saying the word frog, and he's just kind of beating around the bush with it. And I'm just, as I'm driving, I'm thinking to myself, just say it, say it, say it. And of course he said it was a frog being, and it is exactly like John described, and because the two frog beings that he encountered he thought there were more, had a healing role or a like a physician role. So that amazed me. And to have that description with the same kind of duty, that was pretty amazing.
I've never thought of the frog before, personally. I also don't recall that from our last conversation, John. So I'm glad that this report brought up the frog, because that's not something I've seen in any of my research or any of my countless hours of YouTube videos either. But Matt, I really appreciate that there is somebody else that has brought up frogs as well, because it obviously shows it's not just one particular case. Right. This is referenced multiple times. And you, John, you mentioned the grays. You mentioned the frog. There also was a reptilian T-Rex looking figure there as well. That particular entity, do you think that was also potentially a gray that was looking like a reptilian, or do you think there was actually a reptilian creature within the spacecraft as well?
I think it was entirely different species type creature. And, the grays, most of the grays, in one way or another, they typically have a larger gray head, larger eyes, and the rest of their features are smaller, but to different degrees with all of the different things and their body structure. As far as this creature, this literally looked like a small T-Rex head, and it was wearing what looked like a tunic, like Friar Tuck type tunic, except it was a beige colored. And while I got the feeling of that one gray with the brow being a military type guy, and the two frogs being more in a medical role, I got a feeling of him as being a scientist.
The reptilian being the scientist.
Yeah, more of a scientist.
Got it. And how do you feel about the octopus concept, the actual craft being organic or biologic?
There's nothing to lead me to that. I love Matt's report. I respect every bit of it. Matt's the one that found that stuff, and I respect his opinion as far as all of it. I can't dispute any of it. I just don't personally have any evidence of my own of the craft being organic in nature.
Well, I love these conversations because both of you are very open individuals about all of this, and very clearly you've obviously done a lot of research, and Matt, you've spent a lot of time in this particular case. But I also appreciate that everybody's humble enough here to say we don't actually know what this might be. We're not sure yet. We're still figuring that out. Which is, people who speak in absolutes, I'm like, yeah, well, you're just lying. So.
100%.
Yeah.
For a guy who's been abducted throughout his life, I'm still so skeptical of so many other people and what they talk about, and so many people have, and I've said this before, and I'll probably say it on every podcast, but for decades and decades, the naysayers, the skeptics, and everyone have said, if abductions are real, where's the evidence? People have been taken. Why can't you pick something up? Why don't you have better? Why are the pictures always blurry? Well, this is a little blurry too, but still, here's the evidence. Finally, we have some goods, and hopefully, as we get this information out on podcast and any other manner, it's important information. And
Absolutely.
it validates a lot of people around the world who will not look as crazy as they may have sounded to others.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Matt, you, in this research, there were five, I believe, five distinct entities. Is that
Right.
correct?
Right.
So I was just, my biggest focus with all that is like which individual, which entity has the strongest visual evidence from the research you've done?
Well, definitely there's several frames where the tall gray is very, very clear.
Okay.
And I highlighted those in my report. There's several frames where the tall frog-like being that's to the far left of the frame, there's several very, very clear shots of that. There's one or two very distinct images in a couple of frames of there's a small short gray that's closer to the window in the background. And then I was able to find this entity with a kind of a dinosaur-like head. It was only a few frames at the very, very end, but I was able to pick out the ridgeline of its head, the vertical pupils for eyes, and there's definitely symmetry there. So we're not talking about pareidoia or anything like that. These are they're consistent frame by frame by frame. Whereas other elements of the video were, wildly distorted, and there's something going on inside. It's, I suspected that, maybe it was some kind of exotic gas mixture that they could breathe and John could breathe at the same time. And but then after reviewing Stephen Lea's work, I realized that I think what we're looking at here is some kind of a temporal, like space-time kind of something going on. He was able to identify a toroidal spin feature that's behind the tall gray's head, and it's he was able to identify the parts of it, the tokamak, the spheromak. And he was able to identify portions of the video where there was evidence of gravitational lensing. And so there's some bizarre physics that are going on inside that craft that just cannot be explained.
I mean, Stephen said to, and John, I'll let you
Stephen's
follow up real
work.
quick.
I'm sorry, Cameron. You'll see in Stephen's work, and perhaps you'll interject it into the podcast. There are times with Stephen's quantum analysis where we see dozens and dozens of freaky disembodied alien heads throughout the video, and Stephen highlights it. Some of them look like literally like ET, others look like demonic creatures, but they're all bodiless heads. And Stephen thinks that the toroidal structure is an open wormhole, and he thinks that things are coming in and out. This is the science part of this is so far beyond me. I'm glad Matt's here to talk about that. Talk about it.
Well, it's way above my head. I
Kevin, you should get Stephen Lea on the show.
absolutely, yeah.
That would be a very interesting podcast.
Yeah, I think just bringing up saying toroidal spin might throw a lot of people for a loop to begin with.
Very funny. Yeah.
Right.
But I think of just like bending space-time has been like the main focus for me as of late. It's like, how do these crafts actually travel? I've seen a lot of that in other videos that's been discussed as well. But the thing that keeps coming to my mind too is if this craft is hovering there in the sky, it's like nobody sees it. Nobody's seeing this craft. It's completely hidden. Once again, that technology is obviously very far and advanced beyond anything I'll ever understand. But that's just the wild thing that keeps coming up in my mind is that nobody else saw this craft that evening. Is that correct, according to the report?
No one saw it. as far as we know, no one saw it on the golf course behind my townhouse. No one saw it or reported it hovering over the townhomes near the cell phone tower. So it must have some ability to hide itself.
I will bring up for those who have seen Luigi Venditelli's movie S4, the Bob Lazar story.
Right.
There's a clip in there where Bob Lazar describes walking underneath the sport model, and he looks up and there's nothing there, and then he takes a few steps back and it comes back into view. So they have some kind of a for lack of a better term, like a cloaking
Right.
technology. And I'm sure with these special access programs that the government is reverse engineering that technology for sure, because that would be extremely valuable on the battlefield.
Except, what's interesting, not only in my abduction in the Hudson Valley with my friend, which I've talked about, where we saw the big orange glowing craft in the woods, but under regression, when I went with the gray to the back of the townhouse where it was on the golf course, to me it was lit up, incredibly big and orange. It had to be 40 feet high and 55 feet around. And it was all lit up orange brightly. So why no one would have seen it is incredible. There was one, and for where it was on the golf course, there's only a small row of trees between that and Route 1 going through the Keys.
I want to jump back to the small grays real quick, because biologic robots keeps coming back into mind for me, and I've been seeing this a lot as of late. So with the small grays potentially being biological robots, which seems to line up with a lot of other experiencer accounts across the board, is that still kind of a fringe view in this community, or is that gaining a lot of traction? Is it very mainstream? What does that look like for you all?
I know for me that the experiencers that I've worked with, they describe that feature of the small grays a lot. That they're emotionless. They don't get any telepathic communication, or very few cases of telepathic communication. That's usually between the tall grays and the experiencers, and that's how it was described to me by nearly all of the experiencers I've worked with. Is that they seem very mechanical, like robots, like biological robots.
I think of them more as worker bees.
The smaller grays.
Yeah. The only message and throughout all of my abductions and experiences, the only telepathic message I ever got was, don't worry, we're not going to hurt you. Except for the session where I took the video, where the taller gray that came to be, I thought of as more a military guy. He gave me a message that said, you have a mission, you have a job to do. Or it might have been the other way around. You have a job to do, you have a mission. And that was the only other message I've ever received. And I don't know what that might be.
Matt, I want to jump back to the report before I ask some fun concluding questions here, because I've got some just fun general questions about disclosure and everything else going on. Is there anything else from the report that you want to bring up that you believe is very necessary for people to really delve into as they're reviewing the report accordingly?
Yeah, absolutely. The last several frames of the video, you see a white strip on the right side of the frame, and that, from what John had said, that he went from a bright white room into a dark, more control room, which is what you see in the video. At first glance, it looks like an old film reel that has come off of the off of a sprocket and has come off of the camera. But when I went frame by frame to look at it, it's a very distinct delineated line. It moves with in conjunction with the background surroundings on the dark side. So it's not like a camera artifact or anything like that. And when I analyzed each frame, what I noticed was the edge where the light stops and the darkness, the dark room appears to the left side of it. There is the delineation consists of these colored bubbles, that multicolored bubbles that are moving upward, and it appears that there's no bleed over from this light source on the left hand side of the frame, which it defies our current understanding of optical physics for sure. You can't just stop light in midair, so that was very, very interesting. And the other thing to note is that the disc on the overhead of the craft, it appears to be spinning as well. There's the edge has these tiny triangular looking shapes, and it appears that either the disc is spinning or the edge itself is spinning. And then the other thing I wanted to touch on was the atmosphere within this craft. There are several sequences where there's all of this flying debris going all over the place, and I've isolated many frames that had this, like, they're almost like golf ball size spheres that are flying through, and you can track them from one frame to the next. So again, they're not camera artifacts. They're real objects that are moving through the frame. And they're able to be tracked. So I thought that was pretty interesting too.
One other thing I'd like to add is one of the alien pictures that we've extracted, and I'm not 100% sure of the frame even at this point, but it shows a humanoid being, and it kind of looks like a woman with blonde hair wearing dark glasses. One of the things that we still need to investigate further is the audio from this video. And in the audio, and Matt can talk a little more about this, but after I say the final comment that I say, and it includes the word fuck, you hear something. You hear like a whisper. And Matt, if you want to take it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I did not find the woman with the sunglasses or the big dark eyes or whatever it was, but I know the frame where it exists. But I wasn't the one that extracted that, so that's why I didn't include it in my report. But it appears around the same time as in the audio. So this is about the 20-second to 30-second mark of this 43-second video. There is clearly a woman's voice. Initially, when you hear it, it's just kind of a tick-tock, really quick, barely discernible. But when you slow it down by about 75%, and then playing around with the equalizer where you raise the levels on certain channels and then lower them on others, it sounds like a woman's voice, and it sounds like she says either intuitive or to me it sounds like intuitive fuck is what it sounds like, and it sounds just like that. And it's a woman's voice.
Referring to John?
I apparently, or it's either intuitive or intelligent, but it sounds more like intuitive fuck. I can't explain that.
Cameron, if any of your viewers at any point have a specific talent in video analysis above and beyond what is typical, and if any of your viewers have expertise in audio analysis, let them contact you, and we're happy to let almost anyone who has certain talents analyze the video. And the report, Matt and I agree, is a living document that can always be updated and edited and added to.
Yeah, we will absolutely put them in touch with you in the near future if that's the case, and hopefully there are some of those individuals listening in that can support in whatever way possible. Right now, when I think about this and I think about sharing this with my friends and family and the people that are listening to this podcast, I think a lot about disinformation and the amount of BS that we're fed on a daily basis, and how difficult it is to discern between what is real, what's not real, and maybe, what I should spend my time focusing on. A lot of folks have their 9-to-5s. They've got plenty of other things to focus on and worry about. And then, aliens and reptilians and grays and frogs and whatever the beings are is probably the last thing on a lot of people's mind. But when it comes to this in particular, do you think that there is maybe a particular reason that the NHIs are allowing this information to get out at this time and to be shared? Or do you think there's maybe something else going on? This is a question for both of you. But from a timing perspective, why is this now being allowed? Why are we allowed to talk about this in the first place?
Well, we're allowed to talk about it because we live in a free society, and that's why we're allowed to talk about it. Not Gordon Cooper, Edgar Mitchell, the last man to allegedly walk on the moon, came forward, I don't know, 30 years ago, publicly. I might be a little off, but my story is in the neighborhood. And he was on a radio show, and he started coming forward and talking about the reality that we're being visited and that aliens are real and this or that. And the DJ or the radio host said to him, well, why are you coming forward now when you had all this information in the past? And he said, it's my understanding the government stopped killing people who came forward and stopped killing people who talked about it. I hope my story's in the neighborhood of being right, Matt. But, that's what we heard for a long time, and a lot of people have come forward, but now we might be seeing something quite different recently, over the last year or two, with these people disappearing or being suicided or whatever the case may be.
I kind of equated.
I'd love to know your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, I kind of equate it to, I was a big Art Bell fan back in the 80s and 90s, and, he always referred to this as the quickening. And I think that's where we're at, ever since December 2017 when, Leslie Kean and Ralph Blumenthal, published the famous New York Times article. It's just ramped up, and it just continues to ramp up with, whistleblowers, David Grush and Lou Elizondo and Dave Fravor, testifying before Congress, and it's empowered other whistleblowers to come forward, and I hope they continue to do so, despite what looks like it's this issue with these missing scientists that's going on now. I know some may not be related, but there definitely are there are definitely dots to connect within that whole whole scenario.
I certainly get this feeling that it's more of a scare tactic than anything. I think it's being shared. This is my personal opinion. I actually have no idea, but this is my personal thoughts on it, is that it's being shared to kind of try to quiet people down a little bit. But I think more than anything, it's just hyping people up and making people want to share more information more than anything.
Well, I mean, if you look, the world economy runs on oil, and this technology threatens that for sure. And so I understand why entities within the government and aerospace and big oil, they want to keep this under wraps. They've got a lot to lose, and so there's certainly an incentive there to keep anti-gravity research and these kind of technologies out of the public eye. So you have a motive now,
right.
For these disappearances. It's not, all, love and light, as they say. There's kind of a dark side to it, and unfortunately, the dark side is on our side.
Right.
There may be a dark side to these entities, what they're doing, but certainly.
Also, to answer your question, Cameron, about why or is there a quickening, technology. Everyone in the world's walking around with a cell phone, and things are being taped every day. And there's more and more technology. Even the CERN super collider, they report about that they've actually made contact with another dimension, right? You've both heard that. and that they opened another dimension. The other dimension knew we were looking. And so technology is opening doors every day. And I think possibly the powers that be, or some powers that be, not all of them, want the information out there. And we have more and more whistleblowers. We have more and more, the internet's been a double-edged sword in which more people can communicate, more information and data can get out there. But on the other end of it, there's more fakery and lies, and there's more that we have to filter out. There's more available, but there's more we have to filter out to find the truth.
Well, and if I'm the military industrial complex as well, at the end of the day, there are certain technology that I don't want our adversaries to know anything about. Probably a lot of this technology that you wouldn't want any of your adversaries to know about. And if every Joe Schmo had access to this technology, it would probably end the world pretty quick. Considering you'd probably get into the hands of the wrong people. So I think about that side of it all the times. There are individuals like ourselves that just want full disclosure. We want all the information out there. But I also think about it from the other side. I realize that might not be the best thing for everybody to know every single detail at the end of the day. But considering the company that we're in right now, I am excited about full disclosure, and I would love to have a lot more disclosure on these topics. And obviously, that's a lot of the reason that MUFON does all this incredible work, is to get more people this information and to share this accordingly. So what do you foresee, both of you, but what do you foresee the next 1, 2, 3, 10 years looking like in regards to disclosure with everything that's coming out as of late?
I think that some information will come out with Trump administration. I don't think major stuff will come out, but some stuff, and it'll keep the dialogue and the discussion going. Spielberg's movie will be another bump in the issue. And then things tend to expand exponentially. So every little bit more that is added to the discussion itself will grow and grow and grow. And the scientific community, which for the most part doesn't really believe in abduction or talk about it, the scientific community now is just getting on board of the idea of UFOs being alien or interdimensional craft. And you have people who have poo-pooed it and naysayed it for decades who now are on board because they have other people within their scientific discipline who are giving it serious study. Just like John Mack opened doors 20 years ago, or however long it was, probably more, it was more than 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And, with every astrophysicist that gets on board, with every professional, with every expert, it'll open doors for more to get on board and, continue growing exponentially.
I can tell you this, with all of the experiencers that I've worked with over the last few years, there's a common theme. Sometimes it's nuclear, put away your nuclear weapons and, that kind of thing. But I haven't had too many of those, but it definitely exists within the realm of people that I've worked with. But the biggest thing is these abductees and contactees, they have one singular message, it seems, and it's that they're told that they have a purpose. Some event is going to happen in the very near future, and they are part of it. What that means, I have no idea, but it's interesting to hear this over and over and over from experiencers. And these experiencers that I work with, they have everything to lose. They are college professors, university professors, they're attorneys. They are all highly, intelligent, high functioning individuals, right. And they have everything to lose by spilling this. And I'm very humbled to be able to talk to them. I mean, in some cases, the people that talk to me will tell me, first of all, the first thing they say is, "You're not going to believe this. I don't know if I believe it myself." So, and then the second thing is that a lot of times they say this, you're the first person that I've ever told this story to, which is, I mean, it's so humbling that I have the opportunity to give these people a platform to talk about this, because they can't talk to their friends, family, coworkers. They might lose their job, they might lose their businesses, they could destroy their entire life by coming out with this. There's no incentive whatsoever for them to come out with this information, and there's markers across the board that link all these people together. A lot of things that you don't read in books, but and I'm not going to talk about here because I don't want to throw that out there, and muddy the the water. But this is real. This is not a fairy tale. This is really happening.
I know we could spend another 4 hours discussing this topic. And for the sake of everyone's time this evening, and probably the dinner that's heading the table here shortly, I want to be very respectful of your time. But in closing tonight, is there anything else that you would both like to add that, once again, would just provide immense value to folks as they are reviewing this research, and also just maybe even starting their journey down this path of discovering new things, talking about aliens and the grays and reptilians and everything else within?
I gotta believe at some point I'm not going to be anonymous anymore, and I'm looking forward to talking about all of my experiences openly, and I'm looking forward to helping push the issue further and getting people to talk about it, because it's not just people up in the mountains, and it's not just a few people. This is happening worldwide, and it's happening to millions of people. And you have college professors in Switzerland telling the same stories as math teachers in Iowa, as insurance agents in Africa, and go on with that. And there are politicians that have come forward, and there are celebrities that have come forward, and there in every walk of life, you've had people come forward to tell their stories of abduction. And is everyone telling the truth? No, but no one tells the truth 100% of the time about anything. So I don't mean individuals. I mean as an issue in its all. So, but there's a lot of people who, and I'll guarantee you, of the people who know they've been abducted, there's a much greater percentage of people around the world that have no clue they've been abducted. I believe that I've been abducted many more times that I don't know about than the times I do know about.
I would say be be careful what you see on the internet. I have the luxury of all the cases that I get that have videos and photos. I have the luxury of being able to go in and analyze the metadata, and in some cases, GPS positions, times, place them exactly where they were when they took the video or took the photo. The stuff that's floating around on the internet, I'm sure a lot of it's valid. A lot of it is AI. A lot of it is they're prosaic things. I see a lot of spotlights, and I read the comments on some of these Reddit subreddits and on Instagram, and it's lens flares and spotlights and things that are easily explainable. But do your research. Don't just take what you get off of the internet and make a decision based on that. There are a lot of organizations out there that are science-based that I urge everyone to explore. One of them is the SCU, the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies. There's the Soul Foundation. There's also the New Paradigm Institute. Danny Sheehan set that up. Look at the science and these organizations that are doing scientific research on this. John Mack started this back in the 80s with researching and working with abductees, and so I think if you lean more toward take the scientific approach, don't take the internet approach, and don't believe everything that you're seeing on the internet, because with AI now, there's a lot of garbage.
And I guess when people see the sensationalized clips that we're going to obviously have from this episode, listen to this part of it, right? Go and do the research. Get this information. Use it as a way to kind of ignite that fire of sorts. So that'd be my thought process of it is ignite the fire, but then go and find the people who are actually doing the scientific research behind it. And that's obviously a lot of the work that MUFON is doing is incredible stuff and helps to validate a lot of what John has experienced throughout his entire life. And once again, I really appreciate both of you jumping on to discuss this topic tonight. Not an easy one to discuss. One that when I've shared with friends that I'm doing this episode again, they're still puzzled with me as to why I continue to entertain these topics. But these are the things that I love talking about because I know there's a lot more going on around us than we fully understand, and it's okay to ask the tough questions. Even if you're a highly religious and or spiritual individual, it's okay to ask tough questions and maybe have your mind changed or your understanding of the universe changed with additional information that you receive from these kinds of conversations.
Matt, Cameron, you have a copy of the report now. You are certainly welcome to share it with your friends who question your motives. It's science, it's math, it's facts. And once you read the report, it provides tremendous validation to the video and my story and my abduction.
I will say, like, this report it's really the beginning. It's not the end. We're not going to put it on the shelf. I hope that there are other researchers that will come out and try to validate, my take on it. I would love for somebody to do a deep dive. I spent 10 months and hundreds of hours, and I just barely scratched the surface of this thing. So anybody out there that can add to it, I really welcome that. I want to know what else is in there.
If anyone's watching has connections at Samsung, please reach out to us.
Yeah.
We quite frankly, we want Samsung to analyze the phone,
right? And
let their video experts analyze it and see, what they can find from it.
And the video was taken with a Samsung Galaxy S21 in 2021. At the time, that was probably the most sophisticated camera on any cell phone at the time. This wasn't some flip phone from the late 90s. This was a really robust camera. So
Cameron, the comments, I've done other podcasts and prior to having the report. And while the report now gives it tremendous validation, many of the naysayers, the comments were like, would you record this with a potato? The video is not great quality, but you have to understand the room we were in was extremely dark, didn't have any kind of extra night vision settings or anything on. In addition, there's likely some type of electromagnetic interference. Not only are we close to the cell phone tower, but we're on an alien ship. Who knows how our electronics work around their equipment? So I don't have answers. I just have more questions.
Wow. Well, this is officially going to be the best episode of the Cameron Brown Show that I'm going to release up to this point in time, and I am super pumped about sharing this with everybody. And we're going to keep the ball rolling here. Matt, once again, thank you so much for spending 10 months deep diving into this and continuing to do research into it. The world needs more people like yourself to do this research and to validate these experiences. John, again, thank you so much for sharing and continuing to share your story. And I'm looking forward to future episodes where we have you back on because my audience is going to absolutely love this. So I am pumped for that. And once again, really just appreciate you spending the time this evening to dive deep into this.
Thank you for having us, Cameron, and for getting the word out.
Yeah, thank you so much, Cameron. I had a great time, and thank you for letting us share this.
Absolutely. Glad to have you on.
Holy crap. Holy crap.